A preliminary hearing was held earlier this week for a teen accused of killing his on-again, off-again girlfriend and another man.
19-year-old Christopher Taulbee is accused of fatally shooting 20-year-old Dixeana Brainard and then stabbing 24-year-old Charles Callaway in the early hours of April 3rd.
Yeah, prosecutors say that Taulbee approached Brainard and Callaway in their pickup truck where he fired the fatal shots to Brainard, and when Callaway fled from the car, Taulbee allegedly chased him down and stabbed him in the neck. Hours later, Taulbee allegedly returned to find Callaway still alive and then hit him with a baseball bat, ultimately killing him.
Let's go back in. Let's go into the courtroom now. This is the preliminary hearing, and we're going to pick it up from the beginning.
Okay, Mr. Taulbee, can you hear us okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Mr. Gordon, we're going forward with the hearing?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Commonwealth McCall's first witness. I think they're already in the seat.
Federal Recall Sergeant William Howard, takes that witness.
You'll raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Please state your name.
William Joshua Howard.
And who are you employed by?
I'm currently the detective sergeant at KSB Post 6 Drivers.
And were you involved in an investigation concerning Christopher Taulbee?
That's correct.
And were you the supervisor in charge of this investigation?
Yes.
And is Mr. Taulbee present in the courtroom or on video?
Yes, he's on the video.
And can you tell me how Detective Purvis, Texas State Police can charge Christopher Taulbee with 2 counts of murder?
Okay. So originally it was around 3 a.m. I received a call from Post 6, the radio room. Anytime that there's a request for the investigative division at Post 6, I will be contacted to make those calls for who's going to come to the scene. So around 3 a.m., I received a call from the dispatch center that said that Bourbon County SO was requesting assistance at a location on I think it's Pretty Run, in reference to a double homicide investigation. At that time, I contacted my lieutenant to advise him that KSP was being requested to respond prior to calling out 4 detectives that's in my squad, which included Detective Purvis.
And at what time did Texas State Police arrive on scene?
Within probably an hour, we started getting units on scene. We're a large post, as you know, with 10 counties, so myself living in a different post district, it takes a while for some of us to get to that scene. So we had units coming from northern Kentucky, from Georgetown, from down to Madison County. So we had units on scene with probably an hour or so.
And who are the 2 victims in this case?
The victims would be Dixeana Brainard and Charles Callaway.
And where were they located?
They were located inside the residence at, I think it's 3960 is the residence numerical. They were located deceased in a bedroom area.
Was anyone else located inside the residence?
I think originally prior to KSP arrival, according to the Bourbon County Sheriff's Department deputies, when they originally made the call somewhere around 1:45 a.m., that they did also locate a small, I think a 3-month-old juvenile in the residence. Upon KSP's arrival, there was no juvenile in the residence. That juvenile had been removed and taken to the hospital for evaluation.
And describe the scene when you and other troopers or detectives arrived.
I mean, the scene was a single-story white dwelling. Appeared to be an old farmhouse sitting on a larger property. We did locate a Chevy Silverado pickup truck outside. Upon walking up towards the truck, I observed that the Chevy Silverado did have defects consistent with a fire projectile in the driver's side window and also the passenger side window, which led me to believe that there was some kind of incident at that location in the vehicle. We initially got a search warrant for the residence at 3960, and upon prior to making entry to the house, we had animal control to come out because I think we discovered 11 dogs inside the residence.
And tell me your basis, the detective's basis, for the 2 counts of murder against Christopher Taulbee.
Okay, so the basis would be, early on in the investigation, we believed that the female occupant in the residence was, in fact, Dixeana. I spoke with Chris Taulbee's father at the scene, Jeremy Taulbee, and we had a conversation which led us to believe, hey, that Chris could be a part of this or could be responsible for some of these actions at the scene. At some point, he said that Chris had came to his house on Wednesday evening around 9:30, maybe 10 p.m. And I think he got a small amount of money from him and from the father and his mother. At some point, in the early morning hours, Jeremy discovered that there was a firearm missing from his residence, and he believed that weapon could have been taken by Chris Taulbee. Once we hear that, and we hear about the relationship being very rocky, and that came directly from Jeremy Day. Over the years, they've had some ups and downs, some issues like that, and I guess at some point on Wednesday that there was going to be a separation.
And what was the initial reason that law enforcement responded, or who called law enforcement initially to the scene?
The way I understand it through Bourbon County Sheriff's Department was there was a call came from a Titus Reynolds into 911 at some point prior to KSP being notified. And I think Titus disclosed that there was some incident that happened there resulting in 2 people's deaths. And that was the initial response for Bourbon County and so to go out.
And was Titus Reynolds interviewed by the state police?
He was detained in the back of a Bourbon County Sheriff's Department vehicle upon my arrival. I think he had provided a statement to some of the deputies that was on scene prior to KSP, but he was also interviewed by Kentucky State Police.
And was he Mirandized?
Yes.
And can you tell us the synopsis of his conversation with the state police?
I guess an overview of his conversation, I didn't directly have interaction with Titus. I know that he had called 911 and reported that there was 2 deceased individuals at the location. I think that he had disclosed that at some point earlier in the night that Chris had came to his residence and picked him up in Carlisle and brought him back to the location. And then upon arriving back at the location, that's when he was able to discover that Dixeana was deceased in the truck. And then that there was an individual, Charles, was located in a field a short distance away.
And did Titus Reynolds inform law enforcement any actions that occurred while he was on scene?
I'm not for sure if he disclosed that or not. Like I said, I did directly interview Titus.
And where was Christopher Taulbee?
Christopher Taulbee at that time his location was unknown. I know somewhere around daylight or a little bit afterwards, I received a call from KSP Post 6 Lieutenant Rick Sparks, and he had been in contact with some supervision and some troopers at Post 14 Ashland. And he asked me if we were looking for Chris Taulbee. And I said, there's a possibility that Chris Taulbee could be involved in this incident here in Bourbon County. And he says, well, Post 14 Trooper Travis Cundiff has Chris Taulbee stopped at a location somewhere around the Rowan County, Carter County line. And I made the decision, and I said, if they have Chris stopped, ask Post 14 to detain him at this time and see what they can find out. I think how Post 14 was notified was Trooper Cundiff had received a phone call from a neighbor that says, hey, there's an individual sitting in a car with no driver's side door, passed out in my driveway. And that was originally why Trooper Tundiff went to the location to try to figure out who the individual was.
And did any detective or trooper from the Ashland Post interview Christopher Taulbee?
That's correct. So once we realized that that was in fact Christopher Taulbee, I spoke with a detective, David Borman. He's a Post 14 detective, and I asked him to respond to the location where Chris was located for the purpose of documenting the vehicle he was in, to see if there could have been possible potential evidence, and also asked him to conduct an interview with Mr. Taulbee to see if he had any knowledge of this incident here in Birmingham.
And are you aware whether Mr. Taulbee was Brainard's by the detectives at Ashland Post?
Yes, he was Brainard's.
And can you give us a synopsis of his interview with those detectives?
Based on what I was told by Detective Borman was once Chris was Mirandized, Chris was placed in Detective Borman's issued cruiser. He was put in the front seat. He was Mirandized, and he said they had about an hour conversation just about numerous different things. And then he said at some point, Chris says, "Well, I will tell you what happened." And he says at that point, Chris admits that he arrives at the residence and he observes Dixeana and Charles in the Chevy pickup truck. At that point, when he exits his car, he walks up to the driver's side door of the Chevy pickup and he fires a round into the driver's side window, striking Dixeana. He believes at that time that the bullet also struck Charles, but based upon what we learned from the medical examiner, Charles did not have any gunshot wounds. So Dixeana is shot in the vehicle, and he says at some point he becomes very sick and begins to throw up, very nauseated. And then when he looks up, Charles has exited the truck and begins to run towards the field. And then they have a altercation somewhere in the yard or in the field area, at which at some point Charles receives he receives a laceration to his neck area, and it appeared that he has a small puncture wound to the chest, used from a knife or a sharp object. And then after that happened, according to Detective Borman's statement, Chris stated that Charles was went unconscious in the field area. So Chris leaves the scene and goes to pick up Titus in Carlisle and then brings Titus back to the scene.
All right, we're going to get a break. We'll get you back into that Kentucky courtroom in Bourbon County right after this. Stay with us.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, the accused United Healthcare CEO shooter now facing federal charges. We're unpacking the latest developments as our experts weigh in.
Closing Arguments tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
Doomsday cult mom is now lawyer Lori.
She's representing herself.
On charges of conspiring to murder her fourth husband.
She said, "I can murder you now."
The cult mom conspiracy trial continues Monday morning on Court TV.
Let's go back to Kentucky, where we are watching a preliminary hearing for 19-year-old Christopher Taulbee.
He's accused of gunning down his on-again, off-again girlfriend and stabbing and beating to death a 24-year-old man by the name of Charles Callaway.
Let's go into court now. We're listening to a detective on the stand testifying bit by bit about what happened according to police that night.
Based on your investigation to this point, when the defendant leaves Pretty Run Road, Mr. Callaway is still alive.
Yes.
And approximately, what's the distance from the scene pretty well location to where Mr. Reynolds is?
I don't know the exact distance. I would expect it would take probably an estimated, in my guess, 45 minutes to go from that location to somewhere in Carlisle, maybe even longer.
And they returned?
Yes.
And then what happened when they returned?
According to Chris, and based on what I learned from Detective Borman, that once they return, that Charles is located still in the field. But he is breathing at the time, and then at some point, Chris uses a baseball bat and strikes Charles multiple times in the head area, causing his death. And
did the medical examiner give an opinion with regards to the death of Mr. Callaway?
That's correct. It would have been blunt force trauma, yes.
And was there, did Mr. Taulbee provide any statements with regards to what happened to the father?
At some point during the interview, he states that as he's traveling on US 60 between Bourbon County and the Carter-Rowland line, that he throws the firearm out, and I think he described it into an area where there was deep water.
Has that firearm been thrown there?
No.
And with regards to after he fired the first shot, was there a reason that he was unable to fire the firearm?
I think he talks about there being a malfunction to the gun, maybe a possibility of the magazine, which would hold the ammunition falling out of the gun, and which would make it unable to fire anywhere.
And did Mr. Reynolds give a statement with regards to Mr. Taulbee striking Mr. Callaway with an object?
Yes.
Has there been a search warrant done on the vehicle in which Mr. Taulbee was in?
That is correct.
Did you find any object or objects in the vehicle that you believe would have been used in the homicide?
There was multiple items of potential evidence located in the vehicle that was in operation by Mr. Taulbee. We did locate what we believe to be his clothing, blood-covered clothing. We also did locate a knife that appeared to be covered with blood, and a baseball bat as well was located that appeared to have blood on it as well.
Can you describe the weather conditions on early morning, April 3rd?
About the time that Post called me was the time that probably everyone's phone went off for early morning, so it was extremely windy, lots of rain. Rain continued throughout the night, throughout the morning. We were on scene 10 to 12 hours probably, and it continued to rain the whole time we were there at very large amounts of rain coming through the area.
And at the time that Ms. Brainard was shot and killed, where was her child?
Based upon my observations and training experience of 22 years in law enforcement, I think there's evidence that shows in the car that we do locate blood on the, I guess you would say, the base of the car seat, which would have been in the extended cab portion of the truck. And then there was also blood located on the car seat itself, which would lead us to believe that the infant would have been in the car at the time of the shooting.
And the infant was located inside of the residence on the property?
Yes. So following, according to Titus Reynolds, once him and Chris returned to the scene, Dixeana, Chris opens the door of the truck in Dixeana falls out onto the ground. At that moment, she is taken inside the residence and placed into a bedroom. Once Chris locates Charles in the field, and after striking multiple times with the baseball bat, his body is removed from the field and also placed into the residence following his death, I believe.
And does Mr. Taulbee admit that he moved the bodies
Yes.
from outside the residence to inside the residence?
Yes.
Does he ever make a statement with regards to how the child was placed inside the bedroom?
I'm not for sure if he speaks directly about how the child was put into the residence.
And the location is within the confines or within the boundaries of Bourbon County.
Correct.
You testified that Mr. Reynolds arrived to the house on Pretty Run Road with the defendant. He arrived in a vehicle with the defendant.
Yes.
Did he leave the residence when the defendant left the residence in the vehicle? Did Mr. Reynolds leave with the defendant?
At some point, Mr. Reynolds makes a decision to call 911, which initiates Bourbon County SO to respond. And I think they locate him a short distance from the location in the field. So someone, he exits the property on foot and is located in a field.
I will pass witness.
Mr. Gordon?
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective or Sergeant?
Sergeant Howard.
Sergeant Howard. Okay,
Yes.
so I'll make sure I address you the proper way. You said that, well, let me start with the interview. So the interview with Mr. Taulbee, both in the cruiser and elsewhere, was that recorded on audio and video?
I know the recording with David Gorman was audio and video recorded in his cruiser and the actual post. The second interview that Detective Jeff gave and Detective Josh Wise, I know at a minimum would have been audio recorded.
Okay. Is that the same with Mr. Reynolds' interviews or statements made?
I would tell him this for sure it is audio recorded.
Did Mr. Reynolds give a statement to Texas State Police with Bourbon County Sheriff's Office?
I think he spoke to both of us. I didn't speak to him directly. I was supervising the whole thing.
I understand. Let me ask, you said that Ms. Brainard was shot in the car initially, in her car, correct?
Correct.
And that was her vehicle was parked in the driveway or in front of the house?
Yes.
Okay.